Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending upon where in the world you are, and welcome to the penultimate episode of Afternoons with Aces, the cloud reporting series. This is, I think, the 11th of these that we have done in 2024. We got one more. I think it's coming up next week. We have gone on an interesting journey, I think, in 2024, talking about chart accounts design and using the various reporting tools within Oracle Cloud ERP to get the most out of it. The biggest reason that Lee and I kind of started on this journey at the beginning of the year was, we went to a lot of meetings and sessions where there were a lot of alternate reporting tools that were put forth that you had to buy in addition to the licenses and the tools that you already got with the Oracle Cloud. And a lot of those tools are great, have nothing to say against them, but the biggest reason that I see folks using alternative tools is that they were either not shown how to use the standard tools within the Oracle applications, or those tools were not implemented properly. And what we've tried to do over the last 10 months is show people that if you take the right steps, the tools within Oracle Cloud are pretty good, and they're pretty robust. So with that, why don't we do some introductions, Lee, and let's go through our agenda, and then we'll get to it. So we're going to do our agenda. Lee's going to talk about OTBI subject areas and the out-of-the-box functionality, and then what you have to do in order to light up the OTBI subject areas. In addition to standard chart of accounts settings that you can make to publish the appropriate information into OTBI, there's also settings that you can do to push descriptive Flexfields. There's some different things you have to take care of when you're using budgetary controls, and there's also some things you have to do for fixed assets in order to get those areas populated. And Lee's going to kind of go through that. We see a lot of customers that complain about budgetary controls and fixed assets, and if they just run the processes that Lee's go through, they come along pretty well. So let's go through introductions. I'll turn it over to my counterpart, Lee Briggs.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, night, whatever we're saying for everyone. My name is Lee Briggs. I run the Cloud ERP team here at Creo, a fully owned subsidiary of SMX. I've been with Creo since 2017, 2018. Before that, worked for various consulting companies, actually with Tom for pretty much all of them. I have worked with EBS since 2001. I started with 11.5.10, kept in EBS until about 2013. And for the last 11 years, I've been exclusively dealing with cloud applications since they've been generally available. I got my degree in accounting and finance, so I know debits and credits. From University of Leicester back in England, got my master's from University of Northampton. I've been over here since 2001. I am an Oracle Ace, so these sessions are Afternoon with Aces. I'm an Oracle Ace. I'm actually an Oracle Ace Pro. I got that in 2013. As you've heard on all these sessions, you can't buy it. You can't buy that award. You can't nominate yourself for it. You can't study for it. Someone at Oracle has to nominate you to essentially say that you're sharing back with the community. Actually know what you're talking about, and you're giving these sessions. That's that's what we do there. As I said, I've been an A since 2013. I was also OATUG Star Presenter of the Year in 2014. That was the first year that award has been given out. So pretty psyched to have that one on my resume as well. Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you, Lee. So as you can see from the slide, I am a junior. So I'm the second Thomas Simkiss. I'm also a JD and a CPA. I am the commercial and SLED practice director for Creo and SMX. I've been so since 2017. Got my Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Business Administration from Ursinus College way back in 1995. Go Bears. And I got my Juris Doctorate or law degree from the James A. Beasley School of Law of Temple University all the way back in 2002. I am also an Oracle Ace. I got my Ace in 2014, 1 year after Lee. And I was also the OETUG Star Presenter of the Year award in 2017. As Lee said, he and I have been working together a long time. I've been working with Oracle as an end user and a consultant since 1998, except for a stint as a ERP director at the AICPA in the early 2000s. I've always been a consultant. Really do enjoy it, and Lee and I both certainly enjoy giving back to the community. And the last thing I'll say is, hopefully you go back and watch these sessions. If you're feeling a lot of pain on your implementations, please do try to go back and look at these. The majority of the clients that Lee and I and our firm have been getting in the last 18 months have been rescue projects. Those are projects where another firm did the implementation and they just didn't do the right things. And some of those things, unfortunately, can't be fixed. Once you make certain settings in Oracle, you're kind of stuck with them unless you do a new configuration. But a lot of things that we've shown you throughout this sessions are fixable. And these are things, no matter where you are in your implementation, whether you're just starting out or you've been live for 3 or 4 years, if you're feeling struggles with reporting, I assure you, if you go back and look at some of these sessions, even the short ones, most questions that we get from clients, we have answered over the last 10 months. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lee, talk about OTBI configurations.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Okay, so with OTBI, you get a bunch of subject areas out there. So hopefully you've played around with OTBI. It is Oracle Transactional Business Intelligence. So it really is a tool for the end users to do their own analysis on the subject areas, whether it's in financials, whether it's in HR, whether it's in any of the supply chain modules. You have all those subject areas out there. If we focus on stuff from just from the accounting world, though, because it will affect all those different areas. As soon as you look at any of those subject areas, you will see a handful of segments from your chart already. They're going to be out there. We talked in the early sessions when we were doing chart and accounts design about required accounts. At the bare minimum, you have to have 3 segments in your chart of accounts. You have to have a balancing segment. That's a segment that every journal is going to balance by. So you'd make sure you get a trial balance. You're going to have a cost center segment. That is most often used by fixed assets. Fixed assets runs a bunch of reports by cost center. Typically, if you're doing an HR implementation, typically that cost center will relate, in the cost center in your chart of accounts will relate to a department type construct in HR. So you have that segment. And the third segment you have, the last one we have listed there, is a natural account segment. So that's like cash, that's AP liability, that is revenue. You have to have those 3 segments. You can't light up Oracle without them. And then you build the rest of your chart out. That's why in these subject areas on the right-hand side, I'm just looking at general ledger transactional balances. I can see those 3 segments are listed out there. Balancing segment is about the 5th one down. Cost center is just below it. And natural account segment is down there. However, you don't see the rest of your chart out there. Now, if when you're doing your implementation, you use the rapid installer tool, so it's a spreadsheet type tool where you can kind of build out your segments and the values, everything we're talking about now will have happened already. That's the beauty of that tool, as well as getting your chart in place. It will actually build out all this OTBI stuff. However, if you implemented before that tool came along, or if you didn't use that tool at all, and we still see a bunch of implementations where that tool isn't used, then you have to do these next steps. And one of the rescue gigs that Tom was talking about earlier, that we've actually been doing really recently, none of these steps have been done. So the rapid installer wasn't used, and so OTBI isn't going to work for them. So we're going to walk through what rapid installer would do as you go through there, and what you can do manually in order to get your chart, your subject areas, actually showing your full chart of accounts out there. So step 1, we've talked in early sessions about having your account hierarchies out there. For each of your segments, you're going to build a hierarchy out there. It's going to be, essentially, it's going to have all your values in the hierarchy. You could have multiple hierarchies, could have multiple versions out there. One of the steps you're going to do is force flatten each of those hierarchies. So you're going to go into your hierarchies area, you're going to select actions, go down to flatten, and then column flattening. All that's doing, it's looking to denormalize the hierarchy data. Essentially, it's looking to say, this child reports to this parent. From a OTBI point of view, it just makes reporting quicker. You're looking to do that step. And we typically, on our implementations, we stress as soon as you do anything with a hierarchy, run that process. It doesn't take long to run. You're literally forcing it to go through. So you're going to force that through. As we said, find the hierarchy, actions, flatten, column flattening, takes you down to the bottom screen there, and you're just going to say online flattening, but force it through. You're going to do that for each hierarchy, for each version that you have active out there. That's the first step. Second step, you're going to make sure your hierarchies and your versions are all published. And again, this is a dumb thing. You want to make sure this is all out there. If it's not published, OTBI isn't going to see it. OTBI isn't going to be able to do anything with it. So you're going to make sure they're publishing. So from setup and maintenance, we're looking for publish account hierarchies. We're selecting all our hierarchy versions. You can see that I've expanded out a couple of them, the activity and the BFY federal. I've expanded out the hierarchy, found the versions, made sure the box is checked all the way on the right-hand side, that lovely publish checkbox. And then I've hit publish. And this just makes sure that the hierarchy is actually available to be used, whether it's in FRS, SmartView, or in our case, OTBI. You're going to want to take a look at the outputs of those processes. If it can't publish, if you've got duplicate values, if you've got, hey, you've said this is a parent, but it can't be a parent or whatever, that will be listed out there. If you've got duplicate descriptions, it will be listed out there. So you want to review that. And again, that's part of regular maintenance. You should be doing that anyway, but we're taking care of that. So step 3, now we're looking at labels. We're going to make sure that our segments that we didn't have previously, so the balancing segment, the cost center segment, and national account segment, we're going to create labels for what we want to call them. So in this, we're still in our setup screens. We're looking for manage chart of account setups. We're looking for our structure. So you can see that we're in the screens at the top. I've got navigation at the top. I'm looking for all my chart of account structure. They begin with, if you want to search for the Flexfield code, it's GL #. You're going to search for that. You'll only ever get one version in there. So you'll only get the general accounting Flexfield. We're going to hit. From there, we're going to go to actions. And you'll see the third option down is manage segment values. So what am I doing there? As soon as I get into that screen, you're going to see something like we have in the bottom right. I'm going to see the 3 segments I called out. They're the ones that we can see that Oracle is using already in the subject areas. So I've got the segment label code, which is FA cost center. We talked about the cost center. It's mostly used by fixed assets. On the far right-hand side, the BI object name that it's looking for is cost center. I've got GL account. That's our natural account. We know that's our natural account. The name of it that will appear is natural account segment. The object name that is pointing to is that natural account segment. And finally, the balancing segment, primary balancing segment, is that is listed out there. You can see none of those other segment types you would have out there have a label. We're going to create our own labels. So on that same screen, I'm just going to add a new value. I'm going to click on that plus. I'm going to enter what the segment label code is.
Hey, Lee, we do have one question that,
Go
if you
for it,
don't
sir.
mind, I just want to get it now. So it's from Candace. She wants to know what's the difference between online flattening and forced flattening.
Okay.
And I'm going to do my best to answer that, Lee, but if I say something you want to disagree with, just let me know. So online flattening, Candace, is essentially used when you want it to flatten right then and there. It works relatively well when you have a relatively simple and not complicated hierarchy. And you want to have optimal performance. So if you got a new tree or a new tree version, you can just do it right then and there and use online flattening. If you've got an older tree or a more complicated tree, you would use what's called forced flattening at that point, and you can schedule that. So typically when you use forced flattening, it will handle both the row and the column dimensions concurrently. And you want to do that again when you are in a larger, more complicated hierarchy. So if you're, in an implementation that's been on a while, or you've been live and you've got a larger, complicated hierarchy, you don't want to do online flattening anyway, because it'll actually affect your performance in the environment. So hopefully that answers your question. If it doesn't, let us know via the chat, and I'll do my best to give you a different answer. Lee, you got a supplement or a different answer than I just gave?
That is exactly the same answer. I would have delivered it with an accent, but I would have given the same answer.
Brilliant. All right. Hopefully that answers your question, Candace.
Okay, I'm going to assume that does. Thank you, Tom. Okay, so we're going to create our segment label. So I'm going to give it a segment label code, what I want to refer to this as. So I generally will use GL underscore whatever the segment is, or segment underscores between each of the names out there. We'll give it a name and description as I want to see it on the screen when I start applying these segments to my different columns in the chart. And then finally, the trickiest one to do, and this is going to sound so stupid, you have to give it a BI object name, and it has to look like that. dim-gl space segment 1 through segment 10. The hint I will give you, because I hate this screen, if you are documenting this, and you're going to document it because you're all good implementers as you go through there, and you keep a track of everything you do. If you document this in Word, Word is going to want to change that dash from an N dash, small dash, to a large dash, an M dash. It's all typography stuff. An M dash will not work in this form. Whoever invented the idea of dashes on this screen deserves to have nasty things happen to them. But make sure you have an N dash everywhere. You can see as I've typed it out here, dim, little dash. You look down here, M dash. Got to be an N dash. Of all of this, that is going to be the part that trips you up. And honestly, every time I've had to do this manually, it's always, why isn't this working? Because I'm copying it from some screen.
Yep.
Okay. So
Yep.
you're going to call each of the segments dim dash GL segment 1, no space between segment and the number. You have 10 segments. That's all you have. So you've already got your 3 segments out there, your primary, your cost center, your natural account. You don't have to worry about those. It is the remaining segments. You have 10 of them. So if you've got a 13 segment chart of accounts, you're going to be in good shape. If you've got more than 13 segments, you're going to have to make some choices about what do I want to have available there. Now, if you're doing this for budgetary control, you're going to have to do the same kind of thing for budgetary control. The BI object name must be dim-XCC segment 1 through segment 10. Going to look different. XCC as opposed to GL. That's the differences. In budgetary control, there is no required field. There is no concept of balancing segment, cost center segment, natural account. So you have to build them all out there. Okay, we've created our segment labels. We've got one there called program. Okay, we're now going to assign those labels to our segments. So I've now gone back into manage structures. I'm now editing my structure and adding my label. So the one that we saw on the previous screen, I created a label for the GL program. I've gone into my structure. I've selected the line that I want to add a label to. I've edited it. That's all in that top left section. I now have at the bottom of my screen labels, and you can see that I now have labels out there. I have a label for program segment. That's the one I just created. I'm literally going to click on that and send the arrow to the right-hand side. That's putting that label on that segment. And I would, in our case, this chart of accounts, I would do the same thing for, I think activity, I think was my natural account. So object class, BFY, organization, feature 1, feature 2, whatever. I would build all that stuff out. Very easy so far. Okay. We've added labels to each of our segments in the managed structure. Now we have to go down to the structure instances and check for 2 things. In the structure instance, we need to make sure that each segment is BI enabled. If it's not BI enabled, it's not going to appear in BI. It's not going to appear in OTBI. So we probably want this enabled. We also have to make sure that there is a hierarchy attached to this. This is a default hierarchy, so we have to make sure that's attached. Again, in my case, I've gone into my structure instance. I found my structure instance. So in this case, the chart of accounts is called Federal Agency. I've gone into each segment. I'm editing it. I'm making sure it is BI enabled. And then in the tree name, I'm putting the hierarchy that I have for the I have as a default for that segment. And I'm going to repeat that for every segment for which I've just created a label, as well as the fund, the cost center, and the natural account. We've done all that stuff. We return to our screen. So whether you've gone into managed structures or managed structure instances, it takes you back to the same screen. We're now going to make sure that our chart of account structure is deployed. Because we just made changes, it wouldn't be deployed. We're going to deploy it. So we've selected the line, and you've got a button to on the halfway on the right-hand side, I guess, for deploy Flexfield. And you're looking to have a green check out there. Now, because this is deploying a chart, again, it shouldn't affect anything. I would do this out of hours. It shouldn't affect anything, but you don't want to be the guy who just caused your chart of accounts Flexfield just to fall over during the day. So we're going to deploy that. And that takes a little while to run through. It's maybe a minute, maybe 90 seconds, but that will run through. Okay, step 7. We are almost there. We have to run a couple of processes. So we're going to tools, schedule processes. First process we're going to run is a process called create rules XML file for BI extender automation. Yes, it's a mouthful. Create rules should get you home. There is one parameter and one parameter only. Which S-space application are you looking for? So whatever chart of accounts you just updated, that's what you're looking for here. If you did this for multiple charts of accounts, you're doing this, running this process a few times. And you're going to wait for it to complete. This one does take a little while to go through, but you're going to want this one to complete. Again, out of hours is good. Again, you're not looking at hours for this one. This one is a few minutes, but it has to complete before you run the next one. The next one does take a while to run. So the last process we're going to run is import Oracle Fusion data extensions for transactional business intelligence. Now, because I've done this, because I'm doing this for financials, I'm running this for ERP and financial reporting. There are steps that you have to do with HCM. There are steps you have to do with CRM. So you could hit all. I always do ERP and financial reporting because I know they're the ones that I'm responsible for updating here. This process does take a while. This one, if you've got a brand new instance with no transactions in, this process takes an hour. So you're not looking at like days for this to run if you've been using the system. But again, it's do it out of hours. Make sure that there's no processing going on when we're doing this stuff. Okay, we've run those processes. So 7 steps. Really isn't that much to it, but there's 7 steps. Once we've done those 7 steps, if we now go into OTBI, we look at the same subject areas. I'm literally taking screenshots of before and after. Looking at the transactional business balances real time on the left-hand side. Before we did this, I see balancing segment, I see cost center segment, and natural account segment. After I've run this, I see all those other segments. You saw that the screenshots I was adding labels was program segment. It's now available there. Organization segment now available there. BFY segment is now available there. So every segment that we didn't have before is now available in OTBI. You can now use that as I want to put that in as a column on my analysis. I can actually do that. I can use it as parameter for, hey, only bring back programs, 1000, 1001. I can now do that. Before that, I was unable to do that. That one there, that screenshot there is purely for transactional, GL transactional balances real time. The other areas that this affects, well, there's a ton of them. In GL, there's journals and transactional balances. In payables, on the invoice side, there's prepayments and transactions and trial balances. On the payment side, there's disbursements. In receivables, yep, there's a ton of them. There's about 8 or 9 of those. If you're looking at projects and procurement, those will also get affected out there as well. So you can see all that kind of stuff. And so it starts building out. Now, we said earlier, there are differences. That was everything we've looked at here is GL hierarchy. If I look at budgetary control, as I said, there are no mandatory segments when you're doing budgetary control. There is no, you've got to have a balancing segment, cost center segment, natural account segment. So yes, still you have to do this for everything on that side. And that's why if you look at the budgetary control transactions real time, you don't see any dimensions out there. Nothing comes out of the box, therefore you don't see them. You do still have to run this process. You only have 10 segments. So you have DIM, XEC segment 1 through segment 10. So you've just got to plan around for your budgetary control of what am I looking for. Typically in budget control, and Tom, I know you've got some thoughts on this. Typically in budgetary control, you don't have the full segments from your chart of account. You can do, but you don't have to. So you now start looking at that kind of thing.
So a couple things on the budgetary controls. If you do your budgetary control setup properly, and what I mean by that is Oracle's got a very specific methodology that they recommend you follow, and it really does a nice job. And essentially, it has you load the budget at the lowest level that you want to track. And as Lee said, it's typically not all your segments, but if you've got more than 10 segments, you do have some challenges, and I'll talk through very quickly how you address those. But essentially, you load your budgetary controls cube using the segments that you need. If you want a lower level of reporting, not necessarily controls, because you're limited to the 10 segments and reporting in the budgetary controls cube, you can load your budgetary control cube, and then using the FBDL load tool, you can actually load it concurrently into your general ledger. And obviously, you can load it to a budget scenario. So if you need more detailed reporting, you can actually use the general ledger cube if you need more than 10 segments. But, that's a lot. I just would be, we've been doing this for a while. I've never seen anybody, have that many segments. but certainly something to be cognizant of. And just the last thing, just as an ad, this really is huge. If you don't do this, all those subject areas that Lee just went through, you only have the 3 mandatory segments. So it really limits the reporting that you can do. Um, Something that Lee and I typically do on public sector implementations. I didn't used to do this, but I've done it really for the last 5 or 6 years. We typically will put a project segment in the GL, mostly because it facilitates easier reporting from projects. If you're trying to do reconciliations and if you're trying to get project-based P&Ls, it's just much easier to do from general ledger than it is from project accounting. But if you don't populate those descriptive flex fields, and if you don't populate those fields and push it out, that project segment isn't available to do your analysis within OTBI. Back to you, Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And as Tom said, we talk about these limitations of 10 segments, and people often say 10, really, that's all I have. Gee, that's tough. It's honestly, I struggle to think of implementations where I've seen more than that. I can think of a handful that were on EBS, where some client that Tom had years ago had like 25 segments, and one in the middle was like 30 characters long with letters and whatever. But typically, when you start seeing the reporting that's available for you, or the analysis tools that's available in cloud, you start getting down to where 10's a pretty good number. Even with future segments, 10's a pretty good number. The other items we have around is budget control. I call out 10. Typically don't see people budget down to 10, but I want to call it out to make sure you're aware of it. The other one is around fixed assets. We talk about budgetary control and the subject area that you have out there, so that transactions one. Fixed assets, you have a similar kind of thing. So you have to do the same thing for categories, for locations, and for your key flex field. Categories, I can see people building that. So you get major and minor. That one's easy enough. I can't remember the last time I saw someone with a third segment. We actually just did an implementation with third, but I can't remember the last one before that. So having to build some of this stuff out, a lot of it is available to you there. For location, the state segment is a required field in fixed assets. When you do a location, you have to have something available to you for state, and that's for state reporting in the US. That one's already available, but the other ones you would have to build out. Again, it's the same methodology. The only difference with fixed assets, similar methodology, I guess, don't have to do the flattening, don't have to do the hierarchies. That concept just doesn't exist in fixed assets. So that's more it is the same process, you just miss a couple of steps out. So Tom, that was everything we wanted to go through. We talked through getting the chart of accounts, OTBI enabled. So force flattening everything, making sure your hierarchies are published, going into your structure, creating labels, adding labels to the segments. We then went into the structure instance and made sure that we could see that everything was BI enabled, and we had a default hierarchy for it. We did that for everything. We deployed. Wow, been an early day. We deployed the structure. We then ran a couple of processes, and we see our outputs out there. That was everything we wanted to cover today. I know folks have probably got some questions, so we're going to let them type away with those questions. But anything you want to add at the end?
Sure. Well, we're waiting for some questions. We did a couple earlier segments on Smart View. I think those were the third or the fourth segments, and one of those we did how to connect Smart View to OTBI. And the reason I bring that up is obviously you can use OTBI within the native UI, but a lot of people really do like Excel. And I would say if you did not attend that session, or if it's been a while, please do go back and look at that in conjunction with this one. You really can get some great reports. And if you are an Excel person, you do dashboards, you can put them in, you can create report books. And those report books, when they're fully fleshed out with all these segments, they really do a nice job. There's some tools on the market, as I said at the beginning of this, that they are very nice and they're pretty robust. But I have not yet found a tool that is so significantly better than what you can get out of the box with the Oracle Cloud that I would recommend buying it. That's just our experience. Instead, Lee and I, we do see an awful lot of these implementations. With that, I don't see any additional questions, but we'll hang on for a few minutes. I know some folks might be waiting, but we'll give another minute or two, and if not, we will wrap this one up. I think our next session is Wednesday of next week, Lee, if I'm not mistaken.
If we are live, if you're listening live, it is on Wednesday. If you're listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, it could be in 20 seconds.
Yeah. So yeah, next Wednesday, that is, what date is that? I should know this off the top of my head, and I do not.
The 23rd.
23rd. That would be the last one for the year. We did a
Yeah, let's hold off on that, Tom. So there may be thought, this is so much fun doing this kind of stuff. It's fun when it's prepared. It's really fun when it's not prepared. So maybe, just maybe, there might be an AMA session at some point. Don't count on it. If you see any advertising going out for it, it'll happen. We may have an AMA session where you can go ahead and just ask whatever questions you want.
a couple other things. I am doing a session in a week or two with Jeff Hare from ERP Risk Advisors on common mistakes that people make during implementations, and we do see that quite a bit. And then I will also say we'll probably put out a poll. We put out a poll last year on what topic people wanted us to cover. We had a decent response to it. I think we had about 100 folks respond to it or so. And the topic they picked was reporting, which coincided nicely because based on what we had seen, that is what we wanted to cover. But if there is a topic that you would like covered specifically by the ACEs, doesn't necessarily have to be us. Lee and I are members of the ACE community, and we typically will do sessions with other ACEs, which Lee is referring to just now. Certainly happy to get some expertise on in an area that is not in our wheelhouse, whether it's database administration or HCM or security and controls. We have some great community members in the ACE community. I'm always happy to bring that up. Seeing no open questions, I think it is time to shut it down for today. I appreciate everybody who attended, and we will see you next time on Afternoons with ACEs. You're welcome, Candace. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.